My name is Barry Davis and I'm a divorce mediator. I help keep my clients out of court, help keep their children out of the middle, and allow my clients to move on with their lives as quickly as possible. What I'm here to talk to you about in this video is the daunting task of telling your children about the decision to divorce. This is such an overwhelming conversation to many parents that they simply don't have this conversation with their children. Unfortunately, this means the children get their information about divorce from the media, from their friends, or from other sources that the parents can't control and manage. So the first thing I'd say is I highly encourage all of you to have a sit-down conversation with your children about getting divorced and be prepared to answer their questions so that you are controlling what information they get. Now, there are some practicalities as well as some general concepts that I think are very helpful to utilize in this conversation, and hopefully this will provide some structure for you that will help you, number one, have this conversation, and number two, have it go well. So there's 4 themes that I think are important to remember and to reinforce, not just once, but multiple times with your children. Number 1, it's not their fault, and there's nothing they can do to change or fix it going forward. So I know we all know this one already. We've heard it for years, probably decades, that children need to know it's not their fault. That's true, and children still don't necessarily know that. So it's our job as parents to make sure they know that and make sure that there's nothing they can do to fix it. That if they don't just clean their room better or get better grades, that mom and dad will get back together. So it's important to send that message. Number 2, that you love them and that you will always be there for them. That while your relationship with their mother or father is changing, that your relationship with them is not changing and will not change. This is fundamental because with so much in their life changing at this point, this is one thing that isn't changing, and they need to hear this. Again, it's pretty straightforward for us as adults, but children need to hear it again and again, that you love them and that you will always be there for them. Number 3, try to provide them with as much clarity and specific information as possible. Children are trying to reorganize their universe at this point by getting information on where they're going to live, where they're going to go to school, those kind of things. So as much as you can, when you tell them, try to give them detail about what's going to be changing, what's going to be staying the same, those kind of things. You know, they'll still be playing AYSO soccer, that they'll still be going to the same school. Whatever it is, try to give them as much clarity and specific information as possible. Number 4, try to create as much consistency and stability for them as possible, especially in the short term. Now, I have a lot of clients that to them, this means the house, the family home is the holy grail. And I think it is great to keep that family home, at least in the short term while this transition is going on, if at all possible. But if it's simply not possible, if both parties are moving out, then focus on other areas of stability and consistency. This could be staying in the same activities, the same school, making sure they have access to the same friends. Look at it from a holistic perspective and see how you can create as much stability and consistency for your children. So those are 4 themes and concepts that it's important to weave throughout this conversation. Now, let's talk about some practicalities of this conversation. First and foremost, both parents need to be there and both parents need to participate. Your children need to see you acting as a team, even if you can't stand this person right now. Even if they say the sky's blue and you say it's purple, you need to try to come together for your children. They need to see a unified front as much as possible during this conversation. The second thing is to think about the timing of when you tell them. Children need time to process this information. So it's better, if at all possible, not to do it on a weeknight or not to do it sometime when they have an activity right afterwards. Generally, I find that Saturdays sometimes work the best because then they have some of the weekend to process and think about this before they have to go back to school. That may not always be possible, but think about the timing and giving them time to process this. Third, anticipate what questions they might ask. You know your children better than anybody, and you know if they're very linear and logical or they're very social or what their characteristics are. Think about what questions they might ask, and if at all possible, come up with responses jointly as parents, not as soon-to-be ex-spouses, but as parents of the same children. Work together to craft good responses for your children. Lastly, watch your meta communication, voice intonation, body language, rolling the eyes. This is hard not to do. If you're at the beginning of the divorce process, you probably are starting to get to the point where you can't stand this person, or at least you have a hard time being in the same room together. Do this not for them, but for your children. So watch your body language, watch your crossed arms or your rolling of the eyes or whatever else. Try to create as much open body language as possible. Focus on your children, not your soon-to-be ex. So there are some of the practicalities of how you can go about having a constructive conversation with your children about the decision to divorce. Hopefully you can put those together with the themes I discussed earlier in the video, and it'll give you some ideas on how to approach this for your children that can create an environment that is as constructive, as helpful as possible for your children. Thank you very much for listening.